Psychologically, they're just so different.
Yeah, it's hard to get switched over in their mindset.
Yeah. Dubstep in with the first comment.
Did anybody see Dune? So good. So happy. I've never read the books of Dune. Obviously, very aware of it. I've never read them. Dune. That's just so funny.
Would I like it or not like it?
It's hard to know because you like Harry Potter, so it's odd. Like it's hard to know what you.
Yeah.
It's an amazing movie. Like the movie is very well made. Yeah, like it's really well made movie. One of the best films I've seen in a long time. Actually, one of my favorites.
I need to go and see. James Bond.
Yeah, you shouldn't visit the last James Bond, but it's a good James Bond. It's nothing special, but it's a very good James Bond.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
But that was good. Maybe one of those is fucking
Simon.
SVR.
Don't you dare disrespect Harry Potter. Yeah.
Harry Potter is whack. So I mean, you're whack.
Does whack mean it's in class?
I think he does. That must
mean it's cool. Nice to see a fellow Harry Potter fan.
Hi. Tom Stark says, no one wants to talk about movies.
Why can't we just talk about movies?
I want to talk about Doom. Hi lads. How's it going? Oh, yeah, 610. Hello. Any advice on sorting out a move that closer actually to the speakers and breaks the
Oh yeah.
Any advice on sorting out a quad strength imbalance, lateral strength, then medial? Do you mean in specific areas across both your quads, or do you mean?
I bet he means
unilaterally.
His vastus lateralis is stronger than his vastus medialis.
There's nothing you can do about those. They're just purely genetic and like how your brain is attuned to it. They're not something you can really like over tune something. Something you can hone in on. All your quad. There's 3 sections of your quad, and all of those are involved in your quad extension. You can't isolate any quad muscle really.
4 sections.
4 sections. But you can't isolate any of them. They're all involved in the extension of the quad. So that's why, when you hear people saying about isolating with particular movements, or if you hear someone talking about a certain biomechanical body part over a certain digits coach and talking about isolating certain things, it's not correct to say that because you can't isolate things. What might be an issue is you might have a mobility deficit, you might have poor internal or external rotation, and it could be that it is heavily favoring a section of your quad. So that might be something to look at. But I've never really seen a legitimate situation ever, I think, where a particular section of someone's quad was over or underdeveloped due to and needed to be overdeveloped in.
Yeah. I think what happens with the outside of the quad getting more developed is it's not a thing of like the outside of your quad is too strong, it's just your quads are too weak in general. Like in almost all cases when that's the issue, it's like knee pain is presenting, somebody assesses you and says you're out, like your vastus lateralis is overdeveloped and your vastus medialis is underdeveloped, and they say you need to sort that out. In reality, it's just a quad weakness thing in general. It just so happens that those of us who squat with kind of our hips back more, less quad dominant squats will tend to favor the vastus lateralis, and if you can get your knees forward more with a narrower stance, you'll favor vastus medialis. But you really just need stronger legs overall. Like there's no, like what all of your quad is developed in all of the range of motion and movement, right? Certain aspects of those 4 muscle tissues where they connect in, they become more dominant or less dominant in certain ranges of motion. It just so happens your vastus medialis, that little elephant's testicle that hangs over your knee, that's really involved in terminal lockout of the knee. But you shouldn't just go and train terminal lockout of the knee. You should just get stronger legs. Like that will make you better than anything else you're going to do.
Stephen Perlick says, what do you think of the Texas methods? So the Texas methods is similar to what we were talking about yesterday in our sources of information video. It is no nuance to it. There is no progression. It is, a series of workouts, and then you kind of put the loading in yourself, and then you just kind of keep hammering. And while it might work quite well for some beginners for a few weeks, because most things will work if you try progressing anyway, how it's just not nuanced enough. And you don't need a shitload of nuance. You don't need to be over nuanced, which is something else we talk about a lot. And we say if people are trying to sell you nuance and really spacey out there information, they're probably selling you bullshit. But at the same time, there still needs to be some nuance in this. This is why there is people who are experts and people who have no fucking clue what they're doing. There is a spectrum of people, and that spectrum is the nuance in programming and knowledge. And the Texas method is just something that's just not really that nuanced. It would probably work for a reasonable period of time, and then it would just stop working, and you'd be left wondering why is it not working, because it's that kind of do whatever, just to get a head down and plow forward without putting any kind of meaningful thought and nuance into something. If you ask me.
Yeah, I have no idea what the Texas method is.
It's I think it's Ripetoes. I think Ripetoes
is it?
Yeah, these are Ripetoes. So
okay.
Yeah, I just had a look at it there. It's like 3 workouts a week, but it's just like sets of 5, and then one day you go to failure, and then you go for the 5 round and shit like that.
Okay, yeah. Plug and play.
Yes.
Abdulaziz Haji Ali asks, best exercise to increase lower body bone density. This is strangely, bone density has come up a number of times this week. Having not spoken about bone density in over a year, I'd say. Bone density and wanting to increase it is a bit of an interesting one, right? So there's obviously applications or sports or careers where bone density is quite important. If you take impact quite a lot. The reality of bone density and alterations in bone density is it is almost non-avoidable if you're going to get degradation in bone density, right? So if you're an aging female within a certain bracket, you're highly likely to get some sort of osteoporosis. You're also highly likely to get some sort of sarcopenia. And you might use resistance training or some sort of walking under load or just spending time under load. And that can trigger a small bit of positive adaptation with bone density. Realistically, for most athletic populations below the age of 40 or 45, and certainly male athletic populations below the age of 45, the alteration of bone density is not something you'd really look at. If you're under load a reasonable amount of time, if you're not flying to space and being in a space shuttle, and if you're relatively healthy, right? So if you've a fairly good diet with fairly good macronutrient splits, a good amount of animal products in it, you're probably not going to struggle too much with bone density. It's very strange because people don't want to break their legs, they don't want to break bones in their feet, but it really is you really don't train bone density too much, except in those few unique populations we just spoke about there. Bone density really doesn't get altered. It's a thing where when we get DEXA scans and we see I lifted weights for a long time, I have very high bone density, and the other person in my class, the other person who got a bone density scan at the same time, or DEXA scan as me, might have lower bone density if they're just a field athlete because they don't lift weights as often or as heavy as I would. But it's really not something you direct your training towards.
Abdullah Abe says, hello guys, I was running for this RDS program. Is the maintenance program low for your previous 1RM or your new RM? Well, 1RM, your previous 1RM is perfectly fine for the maintenance program.
You can email us and we'll send you out a new one. We'll update it, but it's maintenance. You're not pushing anything incredibly hard.
Hi lads, is it worth strict pressing a jerk with front squat, clean, etc., or just using what you can get the most weight with? For front squats, I would be looking at what's the most technically correct and aesthetically pleasing front squat you can do. So whatever grip that is, whether it's false grip, finger grip, full grip, hook grip, or whatever width that is, varying depending on it. Whatever gives you the best quality. Front squat is more important than replicating with clean. I know some people talk about this. I don't think it matters at all, or even that much, to be honest. Just do whatever you can do the best quality front squats with, and whatever the safest and the most efficient, and it will transfer well enough to your team. For things like for strict press, it's nicer to keep it to similar grip, but you can go a little bit wider if you want, or a little bit narrow. It wouldn't make a huge difference. But in general, your jerk grip should be pretty comfortable, and it's more than likely just going to be the same weight as your strict pressing grip is if you play around with it. So ideally for the strict press, it should be similar. But again, do what feels more comfortable and what you can get most of the weights. But for the strict press, I'd be looking same as your jerk grip, or for the front squat, whatever gives you the best quality front squat is more important than emulating your clean grip, for example.
I assume Angus Rowe WL is a weightlifter due to the fact he's asking about front squats and jerks. If other people watching this aren't a weightlifter and you just want to press the most amount of weight possible, you can play around with it by looking at, like, firstly, what's your front rack look like, but then looking at like a vertical forearm position here. So obviously if it was too narrow and we're losing that vertical forearm position, it's not as efficient. If it was too wide and we lose the vertical forearm position, it's not as efficient again. So if it was a thing where you just, if your name was Angus Rowe without weightlifting after it, you would be better just to kind of play around there. But certainly what Gareth was saying about jerks and front squats is definitely the way to go. There's some great questions down further.
Dennis says, hello, I've been thinking about my body weight recently. I'm about 63 centimeters and I'm 63 kilos now. I'm 163.
5'4".
63 now. I'm usually on 61. I've recently hit PRs and the weight gain is probably due to volume, but I'm hardcore at the moment. Okay.
5'3".
No, but if you, what's your question? Is there more? Is there another part? Am I missing something? Oh yes, a parkour athlete, and I do feel like I'm not jumping just explosively, so I'd be stronger. Is the 2 kg gain too much? What should you get more off of the weight lift ratio?
This is an interesting one because, so 5'3" at 63 kilos, you're probably not too far off being optimal. Like you certainly wouldn't want to be over 80 kilos at 5'3". And this is something where a certain amount of playing around with it, a small bit of auditing yourself, a small bit of like test, retest, is the best thing to do. So you've gone through, like, you obviously haven't changed in height. You've gone from 61 to 63 and you don't feel as good. What I would do is like spend a bit of time here, you know. If I used to just strap a 2 kilo weight onto one and ask him to jump continuously or whatever, or do a max vert jump, he's obviously not going to have the same outcomes immediately. You've built a small bit of strength, but the strength outcomes do take a bit of time to convert over to power output, you know, like power and speed, and particularly in like the jumping and rebounding, it takes a bit longer for that kind of 5 kilo PB to convert over. You'll need a bit of skills practice. So do take a bit of time. Like, don't immediately cut down, you know. 2 kilos is very little. Obviously 2 kilos at 63 is a lot more significant than 2 kilos at 100 kilos. But I would say spend a bit of time there, maintain your strength, see how your strength is going. And then it's very, very rare that an extra bit of muscle is bad, you know. Even in parkour, being a small bit stronger, being a small bit more resistant to injury is very beneficial.
There's a bit more, we'll talk about this in a video to come out next week at our MMA, so have a look for that one. We talked a lot more about power to weight ratio.
Sean Sweeten wants to know what you ate when you went to the cinema.
I didn't eat any snacks because I'm cutting weight at the moment, so no snackies.
No snackies, Rowan.
No snackies. Varden saying, should I work with an online coach? I'm a beginner because there's so much politics here in India and coaches don't want other athletes to go up. You should work, if you can find a good coach online or otherwise, then it's definitely a great idea as a beginner without a shadow of doubt. Good coaches, a good coach is better. So there used to be this kind of thing where people were like, and I probably would agree with it up until like maybe even 2 years ago or a year ago, where people were like, an in-coach coach is so much better than a good coach.
Yeah.
But it's actually not true because there's so many shit coaches. So the hierarchy would be good coach in person. Some people would say then like a mediocre coach is better than a good coach online, but it is not true. That is certainly not true from seeing the results we got with people, but also seeing how shit some people are with other online coaches or even in-person coaches. So good coaches are good coaches no matter what. So priority number one would be getting a good coach. it would have changed. I would not agree anymore with people saying an in-person coach is something magical. Someone hasn't a clue. If someone's able to teach you, they'll be able to teach you well, and they'll be able to coach you, and they'll be able to help you progress. Listen, unless you go to the Olympics, it's not super important to have that in-person coach. It's not that fucking important.
I think people become so reliant as well on a thing of like someone being there with them every day, and it being like really important that I can adjust things. You need to have stuff set out in a medium to long-term plan, and you need to follow that. And just following it is so fucking important for your athletic development.
The amount of in-person coaches I know who coach in weightlifting clubs who do not have plans for their athletes is in the vast majority. And I mean vast majority. I'm talking 90% plus of the online coach or the in-person coaches I know in person in multiple different countries, and I've heard it from a variety of different places where the coaches do not have programs for their athletes. They just make it up when they go into the gym. Is frightening. Now, I don't know why this turned into a rant. You asked about online coaches. Sorry, that's why I turned into that. It's crazy how many coaches just make it up.
And they'd be like, we're doing hang snatch doubles today.
Yeah.
What did you do last week? You did 70 kilos. Okay, go for 72 today.
Yeah. No, online, a good coach. You can get a good coach for it, get a good coach for
it. Oscar Blood wants to know, after running the Road to Anywhere squat program, do you have a maintenance phase, or can you just do it again? Yeah, so you should have gotten the maintenance phase sent out with your original email, just the second attachment with that email. If you can't find that, all you do.
You have to do it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you absolutely do. Don't do anything else.
Just something you out there for you and your feel. Yeah, you have to do it.
You have to do it.
For the benefit of your body in recovery, but also for the benefit of rerunning the program. It's important that you give a chance before rerunning the same stimulus again. So on both fronts, you definitely need to do the maintenance phase. You could cut the maintenance phase short after 6 weeks, but do the full maintenance phase if you have no time constraints. So definitely do it. OL says, is it usual jerks from rack feel harder than jerks after a clean? Yes, because you have a huge amount extra. Now, it's only 4 or 5 seconds, but it's a huge amount in comparison to the clean of time under tension. So when you unrack the barbell and you walk back, there's a load of time between unracking the barbell and walking back under tension where you're not doing anything and you're not adding any elastic energy to the barbell, and you've not stored up any elastic energy from standing up out of the clean, where you have to then do the jerk, as opposed to when you do have the clean, there's life in the barbell, you have some free energies floating around ready to be used in the jerk. So that's very usual, but that's why they're super beneficial.
Ashley Devereaux-Lewis asks, is it more annoying? What's more annoying? A question concerning an injury or being asked about knees over toes, guy? Both of them are equally annoying.
Injury, I would say.
Yeah, injury, neither of them we can answer. AS, will the Seekistan clothing range provide power belly options? It won't provide anything else.
They're not very accommodating power belly options.
They're really not.
They're not accommodating.
They're like muscle fit tees, and the tops are pretty muscle fit too. Like,
you better be in good shape.
Yeah,
if you're gonna get the clothes. That's all I'm saying.
It would actually be a great thing to make you get in shape, because you're like, oh, I have all these great Seeka t-shirts.
You know what? I'm worried. There's a lot of people not going to be able to get enough.
Oh yeah. I'm worried that will be a big issue within a day.
Vastly under orders the amount of clothes I think we're going to need.
Certainly the tracksuits, even the t-shirts though.
Yeah, even the t-shirts, the tracksuits.
We have 80% of the stock in now. Yeah, so very, very close, and the other stuff's on the way. So
I'm so happy with the pants. I'm so happy. With
those.
That was my little baby, so I'm very, very happy with those, to be honest. There's generally, I'd say we're not going to have enough for like 10% of people who are going to want clothes. Like, I genuinely think that's going to be an issue. What we're going to do is we'll announce when it's released, and then we'll do like a live stream when it's released, so people will know, and then it'll be
live stream fashion show.
Yeah, live stream fashion show. And then I would say one thing, just being fully upfront, I'd be ready for pretty expensive shipping. Shipping has gone insane, as everyone knows. If you buy stuff online,
it's usually insane in every country.
But the price for shipping container has gone up like 500% since last year. It's gone up anyway, despite COVID. So everything has gone very expensive. So just be ready. It's in line with everyone else's. Like, we're using the most cost-effective one for people to order from. But it's still it's like
It'll just be expensive for shipping. There'll be a shipping calculator on the website. Just be ready for it.
and like
We've literally gone to all of the companies we could have gone to get the most competitive rate.
Yeah.
Like,
if shipping is too expensive for you and you can order the clothes because of that, then I totally understand.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. And as well, we make fucking nothing. Like, it's not that we're getting extra money from it.
No, we don't. Like, we're getting nothing from the shipping. Like, it's entirely like the cost of the shipping will be paid for by you. There's nothing. We're not charging you extra for shipping. Last time we did flat rates because it worked out accordingly, like plus or minus. So flat rate covered everyone because the shipping was so cheap. March 2020, the day before the world hit the fucking shit.
Literally, it was.
So just be ready for slightly more expensive. I think we're probably, for most places in the world, we're probably looking at like €15 per package or whatever, which isn't that bad, but it's just more than it used to be. And I think, but everything's not very expensive shipping. But also, I'd say if you really want stuff, you'll definitely need to get it. And that's mostly I think it's mostly our fault because I think we just vastly underestimated how many people would want them.
Yeah.
Because every day people are asking. Just as we're on the topic, I think once this is done, what we'll probably do is in February, we will do just a graphics t-shirt launch. So we'll do, if the University of Sikhistan, or the University, we'll do a University of Sikhistan ones.
Yeah.
So if the Republic of Sikhistan ones sell out, we'll do just a graphics t-shirt only launch. So we'll just do like if people like the Republic of Sikhistan, we'll do those again. We'll do our University of Sikhistan teams. I just said that out loud.
Yeah.
And then we'll probably do something like a St. Sikhisburg t-shirt or something, and do that, and just do graphic t-shirts because we can do that. We have a good supplier in Ireland for that.
Yeah.
And we can get that done. On to the next one.
Oscar Blood. So I watched a video of you guys about why you can't just do 5x5 all the time. I thought I'd mention once I did 140 for a 5x5, but never got more than 150 for a single. It's exactly as described in previous video. Shawnee's always in there with the cheeky little drug questions, isn't he?
Yeah, he's always wondering about us, yeah.
Well, lads, when Derek from More Plates, More Dates mentions stanazolol, he talks about it drying out joints.
Yeah.
If that's the case, why is it such a popular drug choice for weightlifters?
Can we answer this? I think. Are we okay to answer this on YouTube? We can talk about stuff like this specifically without issue, can't we? I think we can.
Yeah, we can.
So obviously, we're not doctors. We're also not drug doctors. From what we've heard from weightlifters, it doesn't dry out your joints. It doesn't hurt your joints. That's just what we've literally heard. Like, we've asked people who've taken stanazolol, and they said it didn't hurt their joints at all.
The other thing is, like,
it's probably a dosage thing.
Yeah.
The dosage is...
It's bodybuilders talking about the use of stanazolol versus performance athletes, because like you get a host of other factors just from like neurological factors, like the actual biointensegrity around the joint. Like how tight your tendons are around the joint, which if you're taking loads of it probably feels horrendous for a bodybuilder, but if you're a weightlifter and you want stable joints going overhead and stuff, it's probably not a bad thing.
Interesting about stanazolol is it actually increases the density of your tendons. Collagen, is it? No. Yeah, it's the tendons. No, ligaments. Increase the density of those. And so because they get more dense, they get less pliable. And so it's because of the dosages, powerlifters probably take them in, which is huge doses. They get there's a tipping point with that effect, I would think. And then that's probably what happens to them. Did you normally hear of powerlifters taking stanazolol?
The other interesting thing is, like, when you look at, this is just a more general comment on it, right? Where you look at, okay, if I want to dope for cycling, I'll go and look at all the people who've been popped in cycling and see what they're taking, right? And that definitely holds true to a certain extent. But it comes down to a point as well where you have to look at, well, what would a weightlifter be taking firstly? Then what would a weightlifter be likely to get caught taking? So it's like, they're probably not going to get caught taking some sort of really short-acting thing. Where stanazolol had a host of increases in testing efficacy that are relatively recent, that have probably caught a lot of people out. And, that's when you suddenly see, like, well, everyone's taking stanazolol. It could be everyone's taking stanazolol and they're taking 5 other things, but the 5 other things don't get tested for, or they don't show up on tests, or they pass their systems faster.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely they all just take, like, stanazolol on test. They're probably taking a lot more, or a much higher variety of compounds.
Fuck, what was I going to say? One interesting thing as well is Are you so sure that's what people were taking when they got
Oh,
cast?
this is a great thing. Yeah.
Are you so sure?
We've heard it from multiple sources where
Yeah.
someone gets popped for Snazanol
And they weren't taking.
and they weren't there, or they had gotten tested in their own country, had been fully clean,
and then they test.
and then they test positive, and it's just like, oh, just write down Snazanol as that's what they got popped for.
Crazy.
So many people,
Yeah.
lads, you would not believe it.
Are we sure? Oh, this is you for.
So Tyrone McCabe.
Tyrone,
So
that's a great fucking name.
Tyrone. Done a rugby season or rugby training needs analysis. So I think we told him through last time. Strength very good, endurance good enough for my level, which isn't good enough. Your endurance seems to be very good too. If your strength is very good, speed and agility shocking. How would I in-season program look to improve speed? Tyrone, it's very, very, very difficult. The main thing with speed, power, agility training is you have to be sharp and you have to be really fresh when you're doing it. And if you're in season rugby, you've got 2 or 3 sessions a week where you've contact and you're on the field, and you probably have a game every 2 or 3 weekends every month. So it's very unlikely you're going to get 2 sessions a week where you feel really fresh, really sharp, you're not sore, you're not tired. It's really going to have to be you being like, okay, here's my sprinting program or here's my plyometrics program. And now I have to find 2 hour-long or 2 45-minute long slots twice a week where I'm phenomenally fresh. And that might be like, you might have to leave work at 12 o'clock on one day, go take your lunch early on another day because they're the times you feel fresh. It's very unlikely you'll feel fresh in the morning. It's highly likely in the evening you'll be either too tired from work or university or school or whatever it is. And it could also be a thing that like you have a rugby session in the evening, so you can't go and do all your sprints beforehand. So then you'd be really tired when you get to rugby training, and it would be non-beneficial. But that, it is challenging during the season because you must be fresh. You can't be sore, and they have to be really high quality sessions when you're doing them.
Jamil is asking, trap bar jumps and high pulls any good? So these would be both supported heavily by the literature for power training. So my answer would be yes, for sure, for those. Just flat out, yes. That's what, for power production training, that's what a lot of consistent studies say, is like pulls at like 80% of body weight or something. Is it 80%? And then trap bar jumps are about 20% of body weight loaded. It was the most often. I think you've seen more of them. And then high pulls. The high pulls one has been done a good few times in different studies, and even did it with weightlifters. One particular from Korean university, I think. And obviously they produce the most power in the high pulls as well. So I think it's about 80% of the body weight for the high pulls. But that would change depending on how proficient you are with things. So it could be a lot less for you, or it could be a little bit more. But both of those are useful for power production, according to the science. Arjun says, how to get back into strength training after sickness and fever? Very, 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 very slowly, very tame, very timid. Do some work capacity first, get a little bit of GPP going in your training, whatever sport you're doing, if weight are part of things, javelin, darts, whatever it is. Get a little GPP going first, get some general fitness up, because you'll have lost, quote unquote, some of that, or you'll have a negative effect on that. So get some of that back, and then really slowly ease back into training. We do have a return to weightlifting on the website. It's 1 month. It's mostly for people who came back after COVID. CVID after the break, but it would work very well, obviously, after being quite sick as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say as well, if you're doing any aerobic work and you have a respiratory tract infection, a cold, a flu, anything like that, you want to be probably a week past that before you go to aerobic work. So if you still have a lingering infection high up in your respiratory tract, so you might have a throat infection, you might have like a non-deep chest infection, the second you start exercising and really taxing your lungs, even it could be like high volume work in the gym and you're breathing heavy, you start expanding the amount of your lungs you're using, and you're just opening up those kind of virgin areas of your lungs to an infection that they're probably not being penetrated by currently. So you really want to be, any respiratory tract infections, you want to be a long time over them before you start running or doing conditioning. Do you feel dirty?
Where are we going?
Aaron O'Neill says, not a question. A few months back, you lads told me to ditch the wrist supports because they're making my already weak wrists even weaker. Since ditching them, I've noticed a huge improvement and less pain.
Improvement. Yeah, I've wrist issues recently. You know, so I very rarely wore them unless I absolutely had to, because they just do not help your wrists. Or asking a shoulder hurty question, so I don't think.
No. Or Egulzabal, we don't answer injury questions.
Is running 5x5 program for 6 months too long, or should I change the volume? Yes, just go watch the full video.
Yeah.
Why you can't always be 5x5, and I'll answer your question longer than that.
It's around 5.5 months too long.
Yeah. My left tibia is.
That's more than likely an imbalance. So Aki Ma says, my left tibia or foot is rotating outwards while I'm squatting. Is it okay to continue training like that, or will it cause an imbalance? And is that imbalance side imbalance is okay in general? No, you need to go and fix that. That's more likely a range of motion thing. A lot of the time you'll have restricted ankle mobility or hip mobility on that left side, and that's causing that left foot to go out. I would assess that immediately before doing anything else, before continuing to train.
Somebody in...
Is that Korean?
I think that's Korean. I think it's Korean.
Is that
no, it's not Korean. No, I don't think it's Korean. I think it might be Japanese. Are small calves a bad thing specifically for weightlifting? What do you think about the common thought that they can't really be grown that much? Should weightlifters train calves at all? So on a random note, you do see some countries, they do train their calves. You see like Egyptians, I've seen Belarusians doing them. I've seen Uzbekistan doing it, where they'll stand on like a 2-inch block in front of them. They'll put their toes up on that, their heels in the ground. They'll put a barbell on their back. They'll just do calf raises. Mobility. So like your soleus muscle or soleus muscle. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I've been saying it all wrong. So the upper portion of your calf is heavily involved in tracking of your knee. So if you have issues with knee tracking, then it may be an issue. Muscle size does not necessarily indicate a deficiency for you. So I wouldn't be so concerned about how they look. Just look at your lower body function and your knee tracking and your foot tracking. And if there's no issue there, you're probably okay. It certainly won't hurt if you train your calves or weightlifting. So if you feel like it might be an issue, just take the box in your brain and do a little bit of calf training if you want. It certainly won't hurt. And it might help, if anything.
Ashley Devereaux Lewis says,
You fancy a
hyphen Lewis says, I'm thinking of buying some weightlifting shoes with an elevated heel, primarily to increase the range of motion in my while squatting. Is there any reason I should not do this? No, you should absolutely buy them. Get them as soon as possible. Get the cheapest pair you can get. See if they work, and then just the second pair of shoes you should buy should just be the shoe you'll have forever.
CVM Polka says, what are some tips and drills to stop jumping forward on cleans? Almost certainly you are overemphasizing heavy contact on the clean. You're almost certainly making too much contact, and I guarantee you that is why you are jumping forward on cleans, because you're smashing the barbell away from you. So worry less about contact. Warm up with some no contact cleans, and I promise you this is almost certainly the source of your issue.
What's your opinion? This is JNL 97. What's your opinion on intermediate standards that have been set by some in the industry? 2-plate bench, 3-plate squat, 4-plate deadlift for reps, 5 or so. If you want to be a loser.
That sounds like beginner.
Yeah.
That sounds like late stage beginner.
That's like teenager.
100 kilos, what, 130?
It's 100, 140, 180.
For 5 reps? If it's for 5 reps for all of them, then maybe that would be early stage intermediate to me.
The other thing is, like, why do you need to know what an intermediate does? Like,
just look at progression or training. Someone wants to know like how they're like, where are they in the strength training world?
Yeah.
To be honest, if you don't start on those,
it's already over.
It's already over. Like.
Yeah, but you should be. I wouldn't look at those too much. Okay, Simon, doing my own strength to supplement my sport, but I find that I can't hold myself back, end up detracting from my sport. Tips on how to pull back on strength training so it supports rather than detracts. Firstly, don't write the program yourself. Get someone to write the program for you who has some sort of knowledge of it. That would definitely be my main thing. The second thing, if you are going to write the program yourself, you need to firstly write out what's a doable amount of volume. So like say, I know I can train 3 times a week. I know those sessions can take 45 minutes. I know 2 of those sessions could have squats. 2 of them could have pressing. 1 of them could have pulling. And then I just go through it like that and write it out like 6-8 weeks in advance, and do not deviate from the program. If you look at the program and you think there's enough volume there, then decrease the volume by 50%, because it's guaranteed you put too many exercises in there for too much volume, for too high intensities. You really do need to plan these things out for a prolonged period. You want an ultramarathon?
Someone's doing ultramarathon. Next we've
shite, I think I pressed end goal.
What?
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
I don't think so. No, you didn't.
Okay.
Does high bar versus low bar matters for quad development? Yes.
Yeah.
Almost certainly.
Absolutely.
If you look at like joint range of motion around the quadriceps, it'll be obviously a lot smaller in low bar squatting. Now you could do low bar to full depth, but then again, if you still look at forward knee travel, you'd still get some reduced amount of that. Not much maybe, but you'd certainly get some. So high bar would certainly be better for quad development. I mean, just look at probably the biggest fucking sports science study you can ever think of.
Fucking study you've ever seen in your life.
100 years of weightlifting and 30 or 40 years of powerlifting, proportional to the rest of the body. Weightlifters would have far bigger quads than any of the powerlifters most of the time. So yeah, quads, certainly high bar is much better for that.
Owen Graham wants to know best exercise or stretch for a strong front rack.
You did in the fucking hole.
I know I did. I told you. Sure.
Yeah. You're absolute bollocks.
Yeah. Most best exercise or stretch for a strong front rack. Two of them. The best stretch, I think,
walk off from this now,
is a combination of foam rolling your lats and then doing a supinated grip hang from a pull-up bar with your knees tucked all the way up into your chest to elongate the bottom of your lats as much as possible.
Just click away.
How do I
just click. No, just click the screen there. Click down there.
That's the first thing. So foam rolling in combination with a supinated grip hang from a bar. And then the exercise is a damn fine, strong front squat. Will give you a very strong front rack.
What was the question?
Best exercise or stretch for a strong front rack.
Oh, you said barbell rows?
No, I said hanging from a bar with a supinated grip and a big front squat.
And barbell rows.
Abdullah's Haji Ali says most practical exercise for long distance runner. If you want to be a very, very good long distance runner, one of the main things you need to look at is efficiency with your stride, right? So the main time we lose, or athletes lose their like good times or their pace, is when they break cadence or their technique and their form changes as they get more and more tired throughout the run. So you're looking at things like ability to maintain midline posture and upper back posture when you get later on in the run. Also, you need to look at the ability for your foot to hit in the same stride and same cadence each time. So front foot elevated split squats to build knee strength, knee stability are very, very good. Single leg glute bridges are very, very good then in combination with those. Then all of your usual static hold stuff for the midline, planks, side planks, back extension holds would be very, very, very beneficial.
Gabe Gabriel says, I heard you say that narrow squats are more effective at targeting quads. Personally, the fun narrow squat targets abductors more and wide targets quads more. Interesting, Greg Knuckles published an article where this match to that might be interesting. To be honest, I've never forgiven Greg Knuckles since the time that he assumed all of IPF for clean, and that's how he based his article. I can't forgive. I'd have to look at that, I suppose. I can't imagine how wide are we talking? Wide is relative, like what's narrow for some. I don't know how you would determine that if they were using biometric markers like based on ratios or something like that. It'd be interesting. But if they were just using a consistent stance width for everyone, particular centimeters apart or something, that would seem unlikely. But obviously a lot of things seem unlikely in terms of logic, and you see the evidence for them, and it's the opposite. So I'm willing to be proven wrong here. But that does still seem unlikely.
The other thing as well in those studies that where they're looking at EMG data for one squat versus another, and they change someone's squat around, it's like you contracting more muscle, using more muscle tissue in a squat is very skill dependent. Like Owen's a great squatter because he is very, very, very experienced at squatting. So the proportion of his muscle is bigger than everyone's, his torso is stronger than everyone's, but also the proportion of muscle tissue he's activating when he's squatting is so much higher. Like he's able to turn on all those muscles at the exact same time in the correct sequence. And that's when we see studies like this and you start manipulating or molesting someone's squat depth or squat stance. It's not a true reflection due to the fact that the person has no skill or no experience in squatting with those positions. So you need to look at more long-term data, like longitudinal or cross-sectional data is very good in these cases, because you get someone who has a skill already developed. You don't then manipulate that skill or change that skill and ask them to do the same thing and expect to have the same results or comparable results from those. You need a skill that's well developed or at least equally developed to someone else. Like if you got complete beginners, someone who'd never sit down and stood up off a chair or never gone to the toilet, then you could do this kind of study where you manipulate where they put their feet, but everyone is going to have some sort of experience in these cases. Everyone will have some sort of experience with sitting and standing. So an intervention model for that kind of study I wouldn't see that as being great.
Now, even like, and some of us have to get up off the toilet with a particular stance because it hurts your knees. But even if, let's say, I don't know if they did use EMG, but if they did, like for example, has anyone shown that EMG actually correlates to more muscle growth? Maybe one of these things like creatine kinase or interleukin-6 or stuff like that. But it's it would be surprising. Dave says, what exercise do you recommend soccer players primarily perform for their specific athletic needs?
Soccer, I'd say. Soccer would be a great thing. If you played loads of soccer, you'd be great at it.
No, he means in the gym. Like he means in the gym.
I know. Do you want to go first?
No, go on, you smart. Go on, you snarky front. Go on, answer.
I'd start with some sort of unilateral strength exercise. Front for weight, split squat, Bulgarian split squat. I'd almost certainly have that paired with heavy bilateral loading. So whether that's deadlift, trap bar deadlift, back squat, front squat, something where you're going to be moving a lot of weight with fairly high skill and good, strong speeds and power outputs. But certainly a combination of bilateral and unilateral exercises, like the ones we just mentioned, they'd be the main things I would look at. And then everything else beyond that is kind of secondary.
JNL97 says best intermediate program for general S&C twice a week lifting.
I'd buy our off-season athlete program and run it over 8 weeks instead of over 4.
Yeah, that'd work very well actually. Piotr says, you mentioned you would use sauna for health. Could you elaborate why you would use sauna for health? How would you approach it? Why not use performance? So for performance, to answer your last question first, none of the data has shown or any of the research, and there's a lot of it that it really does anything for it. So that's why I wouldn't use it for it. Some of it actually shows negative effect, which we thought would probably happen. Why would I use it for health? So there's something known as like environmental hormesis. So you could have like chemical hormesis, which would be chemicals affecting your reactions in your body chemistry. And then environmental hormesis would be things like temperature, pressure, oxygen levels, things like that. And they would negatively or positively affect, what are you doing? Would negatively positively affect your hormones, your chemicals, your endogenous processes. And so some of the evidence does point towards, for example, reduced adverse cardiovascular events in Finnish men, I think, in heart attack, things like that. And then there's likely other stuff where like that extreme environmental hormesis, and to quote a dead horse, when Rogan says things like heat shock proteins, even though he doesn't know what they are actually a thing. There is proteins produced under duress when there is high levels of extreme temperature in a short space of time that are released. Like possible they are useful, they're probably there for a reason. So some of the evidence does point towards a lot of evidence, I think. I've never seen any poor outcomes from sauna-related evidence in terms of health. So it would be something I would use. And funny enough, we're talking about this day, I just like the feeling of a sauna after. One very interesting thing about a sauna is it's very effective at resetting your circadian rhythm. So if you've issues with your sleep and you've messed it up, if you go for a very intense sauna before you go to bed, and you'll be quite sleepy after that, and it'll help you get to sleep. So like heating yourself, your external environment, forces your body to try and cool it down, and then this effect will continue for a time after you are heated up. So when you leave that environment, your body will keep cooling it down, and one of the parts of getting to sleep is cooling your body down, and your body will continue that process, and so it might make it easier to sleep as well.
Interestingly, that's why it's bad for performance as well.
Yes, all those reasons.
Basically, yeah. I think dehydrates the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Albu Pavel says, if I'm doing rows as a main movement back on that day, could I do light Romanian deadlifts, or should I do some back extensions or hamstring curls? Any preferences? I hate to say it depends, right? But it really does depend. It depends what you're using this for. You know, if you're doing heavy bent over row to get really good at bent over row, then you might look at something like the RDLs or a snatch grip RDL, where you're in the bent over row position and getting very strong at maintaining that position. You know, if you're somebody with very weak arms, certainly a single arm row would be very beneficial, or a single arm cheetah row if you're losing upper back tension. But it really does depend. Are you looking at men who pause?
No, I'm completely.
Oh yeah, I'm at. So the next question is men who pause, right? And on a squat jerk for an athlete with strong legs, should you catch then drop low for a successful lockout, or catch then recover to reduce the distance required to stand? The best thing you can do for your squat jerk, right, is move your left leg forward and your right leg rearward.
I knew you were going to say that.
Stop it, lads.
Yeah.
Nobody is better. Clarence is doing loads of squat jerks at the moment because everyone wants to see Clarence do squat jerks, and he understands that.
I want to see you do squat jerks.
But everyone wants to see him do squat jerks.
I want to see you do it.
Nobody watching this is going to have a good squat jerk, and certainly none of you are going to be better at squat jerking than you will be at split jerking. Nobody. It just.
To answer your question, you should squat jerk from the get-go to the very bottom initially.
Yeah.
Nishkal says, is your press program for strict pressing or push pressing? Is for strict press or bench. It works very well for both.
Okay. Cosimo Ricky asks, do the Sikistani have something for the bicep tendon? It hurt after planche and iron cross training. We just don't answer any injury related questions at all. In terms of tendon stuff, you want isometric training once the tendon is healed. So isometric holds. But in general, Cosimo, it's just this is an injury-free place. We don't answer any injury stuff. Okay, Niska Limbu says, my best strict press is 85, push press is 90. You really need to train your push press.
Probably it's either probably mobility or technique issue there. I would say it's probably an issue. Like you could be racky up here. I mean, you're driving for your legs. You're not actually getting any leg drive, you know. So I would say look at more mobility if it's stack lows, or just do a lot more push presses.
Dubstep IRL says, is overhead pressing for rugby or any form of heavy presses? Any use for rugby? Certainly, right? So depending on, it's very position dependent, but if you're a lifter in a line out, so if you're in the front five or even certain back rows, you're going to be lifting in the line out. So that movement will be very, very important. Overhead pressing is also really, really good for maintaining shoulder strength, shoulder health, and obviously your shoulders go through a load. On an interesting note, NFL players, or there was a study involving NFL players, which was looking at the most effective exercise selection for like post NFL draft players. And they did the same study looking at university players, and a jerk, so either a power jerk or a split jerk, was one of the most effective power movements they had, because it's very, very specific. You know, you're in that power position, which is very similar to a position you'd be in just as you drop down into a tackle, even though you're in an inclined position. So split jerks, power jerks are very, very, very good for the kind of power movements. And then they did a crossover study where they copied the design and did it in rugby players. Same kind of findings there again. So certainly overhead pressing is useful, shoulder health and all that. But then for being powerful in the handoff, powerful in fending of all kinds, split jerks, power jerks are very useful.
KSB says direct calf work for stability and strength for squats. Like we talked about there with the soleus. What do you call it? Soleus. I'm actually so confused now because we've said it so many different ways. Only if it's a deficit. It certainly won't hurt, so it's definitely worth a go. And you might be like, oh shit, that was a deficit. So it's certainly worth giving it a go if you wanted it. It certainly won't hurt your squatting. But it's unlikely unless you're at a deficit for the rest of your squat. So otherwise, I'd say it's probably not going to add up much. But it is worth a go.
Hugh McMahon says, on the squat program, so 100 kilos plus. Week 1, day 2, finishing the set, but need 5 minutes plus to recover. Is that expected? Should the final rep be grindy? Week 2, day 1 looks very good. I used a calculated 1RM based on a 6RM input. So the first thing, right? The first 2 weeks especially are very, very difficult for people who don't have high work capacities. Lots of 10s, lots of 8s. The guys who've done it, you'll know it. They're difficult weeks. 5 minutes plus of recovery is probably getting on there. You're probably just reaching a bit too far into it. The main concern I'd have here is the calculation based on a 6RM. As we were talking about earlier with the 5R, like your 1RM could be 5 kilos heavier than your 6RM. So that would almost certainly be an issue. Hugh, if following this live stream, if you just send us an email with your 6RM and your estimated 1RM, we'll just send you out a slightly different program, and we might just chat over and back via email there and get you sorted with something that's a bit closer to where you're at. Stephen Ward, thoughts on incorporating muscle-ups for high-level competitive butterfly and freestyle sprint swimmers? Okay. Muscle-ups, like training of the lats, dry land training for swimming, good. Firstly, great. The issue is high-level competitive swimmer is going to be an issue, right? So firstly, if that person doesn't already have muscle ups, it's going to take too long for them. They'd be much better off doing something else. If they've already reached this level of competition, you're not dealing with the teenager who has loads of time to develop, loads of time to get better in the gym and kind of bring those things on concurrently. In this case, it's probably better off with a lat pull down or a weighted chin up or something like that, or a weighted wide grip pull up. The other thing is muscle ups have inherently more danger associated with them because you have to put more force into the bar. Obviously, instead of pulling to the chin or pulling to the chest, you're pulling to kind of lower sternum, and that's going to be more of an issue. So depending on how high level it is, you have a scholarship dependent on it, or a season dependent on it, or your next Olympic quad dependent on it, I would probably be staying away from muscle ups unless you're in a long off-season period.
Like you get better benefits from like straight arm lat pull downs or something like that. Welcome to Free Dairy. Jen says nearly 40 female started lifting last year, increasing bone density is one reason to go up. Don't understand a lot of what I hear here. Much is relevant to me, but I'd like to listen to you. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks very much.
I think you're in the majority, to be honest, in terms of not relevant, but I'd like to listen. Hi lads, would Ross Mike's Infinite Intensity be a good place to start for general speed and endurance training? No. It's a great book, but not for that. For like, specifically when you said speed and endurance, they're very specific things. Ross's thing was like kind of like strength and heavily leaning and conditioning for kind of a mix between like amateur fighters and just general people who wanted to get in better shape with their life and who enjoy training.
Big tough guys.
Yeah. For speed and endurance training, it wouldn't be specific enough. If you're going to go to the trouble of getting a book for it, would be my answer. Maury Kemp.
Gary back, yeah. That's a question for you.
Gary gave up the caffeine.
Yeah.
And he said, have you found the decaf yet? I just use the Mrs. Toshiba, Tassimo. They just have like little pod things for us, and they taste quite good. But I would say, like, have I found a good decaf for like any of the apparati? No, I haven't, because I haven't looked, because it's like asking a heroin addict, like, have you found any good saline injections? You know. So I haven't looked purposely for that reason.
I just don't want to get involved. Like
I don't want to get involved. Like the sheep that does it, I just want a hot drink. There's some coffee roasters have decaf similar to the flavors of their normal roasts. We find bougie roasters here.
Very bougie.
Annoyingly bougie when you're getting bad customer service, but that's beside the point. But no, honestly, I haven't looked really. I'll drink any decaf because I just want warm coffee. You know what I mean? I haven't really found any brand of. Yeah, and I understand the morning coffees when I have it as well, but I'd have it like twice a week, maybe 2 times a week, 6 times a week, whatever. Ethan Farrell says, also Gary, if that's you, you should do a fucking competition as well. I was talking to Jason about this.
Is it?
That's Gary,
big Gary from the corner.
Big medical Gary.
Corner platform.
Corner Gary. Hi guys, thanks for the live stream. I record myself squatting heavy and I notice my heels slightly lifting off the floor. I have collapsed arches and I tend to go get a bit of butt wink. How to fix this? You have to fix, or as much as you can, fix the arches in your foot as much as you possibly can. It's a hard thing to fix. It's quite a long road. You might have things like pronated ankles and not actually collapsed arches, but if you say collapsed arches, you probably do have collapsed arches. So you need to fix those. You can fix them, you can rehabilitate them, but it's very hard to fix the butt wink and your heels lifting off the floor unless you fix those. I'm not averse to wearing insoles, just like generic or dedicated insoles, personalized, customized ones.
Yeah.
Why you fix it? Because it will help a lot. I know some people think it kind of detrains the muscle, but you already have issues with that muscle. You've nothing to lose by wearing them. I don't think it's going to be a crutch for you. So I would say it's worth looking into insoles, but be very proactive with training your feet.
Nishgal Limbu says, workout at home, can't make noise most of the time. About 3 times a week I can do Olympic weightlifting. I is doing just alternative clean and jerk one session, snatch the other session, okay? Yeah, I'd say that would be absolutely perfect. And then he's asking, to add to the question, is it okay to do a powerlift or with a powerlifting plan? A super total program is a very fickle and a thing that needs to be monitored a lot. I can't think of the correct word for that. You just adding in extra snatches and extra clean and jerks, I wouldn't do that and just add it to a powerlifting program. I would be much more likely to recommend doing a weightlifting program and add in bench press to the weightlifting program. Yeah, having like dealing with super total athletes, it's a difficult balancing act. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that.
Just I take the question.
Yeah.
What? Maybe there's one question. Where do we finish? What was your question there, Pascal?
Yeah.
Quite a funny conversation about all the calluses there.
There's a good one about calluses. I'll answer that one.
Okay, go on.
So to peel or not to peel calluses, this is puzzled question, right? And then people are talking about grinding them, cutting them with a cuticle cutters. In my opinion, so if you're training enough, you'll just get calluses and they have to kind of be removed or they have to be managed depending on the sport you play. In my opinion, the best way is a pummel stone. So the issue with a cuticle cutters or any sort of cutting is it pommel?
Pummel stone.
I would say pummel as if I was pummeling. Interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, the issue is once you get away from the pedantic talking, you get a line at the bottom and a line at the top where that cut happens, right? So even if I'm using a razor blade and I cut it, you have a line at the bottom, line at the top. That line is then a point of traction or a point of friction for the next time you're on a bar or a pull-up bar, whatever it is you're causing your calluses, and that's non-ideal. When we use a pommel stone to grind them down, we get a much smoother transition because we get multiple layers of skin that are kind of gradually worn down, and we just get a much smoother surface, so it's less likely to re-tear. And that's the only reason you ever need to get rid of calluses is the fear of re-tearing the hand. There's calluses which build up in a number of places, like the inside of our thumb, which never really need to be worn down or anything like that because they're in a non-problem area. It really is this area here where you'll get that rolling and folding of the skin. And then if we're on a pull-up bar or holding onto a barbell for a long time, we can get a tear.
Florian says, is the rope anywhere suitable for low bar squats? Yes, it absolutely is. Ernesto says, are we working on Sequestan or sequestrone pills? There might be some ZMA brands.
Yeah.
Sequestan pills at some point, but not in the near future.
Kobe wants to know what's our favorite muscle.
Where's that?
It's down near the bottom.
Someone said, where is it? It's scarcity of consumer goods is a Soviet tradition. I see Sikhs and his honor deserted the t-shirt. They don't think we have t-shirts either, to be honest. Lads, you better buy stuff. You better fucking buy stuff.
Yeah, you better buy stuff because we're all asking for it.
Better fucking buy some. Yeah, I better pull it through now.
Ian Jones, right? I'm answering this because it's a drugs question. People love drugs questions. Kind of a follow-on from CrossFit Ped's discussion. Do you think there's any benefit or any real way to determine what sports are best for taking PEDs? Seems pointless to me, but I've seen it come up.
What do you mean?
So like, it's, you can put a number. Basically, people make the
all sports.
Yeah, people
Everything.
make the
All of
error
them.
here
All of them.
thinking that certain sports are dirty and other sports aren't.
No, that's not what they mean.
No, but they say that they're more dirty.
No, they say some sports respond better to drugs.
All of them respond, like lads, figure skating. They literally developed a new androgenic compound for figure skating because it allowed them to learn stuff faster and retain the learned patterns in their head more. Like, if you think of a sport and think like, oh, it's because they're not big and jacked, like road walking, competitive road walking, like 50K races or whatever, that's as dirty as it gets, lads. Like, the amount of drugs, no, but the amount of drugs people take in sport is just outrageous.
Everything's on drugs. Hi lads, lovely content. Quick question: how long is each weightlifting block? 4 weeks, 4 sessions per week, and then you have 2 smaller assistant sessions that people will do with their main sessions.
Brandon Peak, the merch isn't out yet, but it's going to be out soon. To be honest, you'll know all about it. Don't worry about not knowing. You'll definitely know. Just follow us on Instagram, and you'll definitely see when it comes out.
Ahmed Mastery says, what defines functional strength? I haven't seen the second part, so I don't know what functional strength. Functional strength is a word martial trainers and CrossFit made up. There doesn't seem to be a clinical or scientific definition for functional, so right now it's meaningless. If someone comes up with a strong argument for functional and what it means in relation to strength, then I'd be happy to listen to that. But right now it's just a buzzword and has been for a long time.
Oh, it's so buzzy. Anyone else want? What the fuck? You see this?
That
is disgusting.
First of all, I don't eat bread and there's no crumbs in my beard. Oh, I did have bread actually. Too bad, yeah. Take NAC for respiratory. N-acetylcysteine. Is that what the NAC is? N-acetylcysteine. It is N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine has become, like, this year for some reason, loads of people talk about N-acetylcysteine, and
isn't that the one for after fucking drug dinners?
After MDMA, you can use N-acetylcysteine after drug dinners. I think it does have some evidence for respiratory stuff, but I'm not too sure. Oh, you're talking about for performance? I don't know if we give you performance benefit. Could you please, in great detail, describe the physiology of explosiveness? That is, say, what is the biomechanical mechanism that separates a fast muscle from an explosive one? They're the same thing.
Yeah.
So you have like tendons, muscle fiber makeup, fast twitch fibers. Certain actions have certain number of fiber contractions per second, and then fibers per contraction. The fastest people have the fastest contractions and most muscle fibers per contraction. Then you've like tendons. There's Golgi apparatus. Tendons are like organic responsive springs, which attenuate power put into them and can increase the power goes into a muscle. They increase that. That's too long to add at the end of a live stream, though.
Last one. What do you all think of kettlebell as training tools? I think we got a message on Instagram about this today. I think they're obviously the best training tool for power endurance, but the carryover, or would one be better strength hypertrophy in regular gym machines? They're certainly not the best for training power endurance, because there's no such thing as power endurance. You train power, and then you train endurance, and then you might have better power outcomes for longer, but there's no such thing as power endurance. You just have higher peak power, you'd have higher average power, but power endurance as a thing, really, that's just like a made up term, you know. And I don't not like them for training tools. I get people to use kettlebells to hold on to do goblet squats. I like bottoms up kettlebell presses. I like a number of things where holding onto a handle where the center of mass is kind of moving freely around that handle. I like that. But I don't use kettlebells with athletes to do power training too much unless they're very unskilled athletes. So if I have somebody who can't do a deadlift or can't do a clean high pull from blocks and they're a rugby player, they need to do some power work, I'll get them to do kettlebell swings. Not saying for a second the kettlebell athletes aren't skilled or aren't powerful or anything like that. It's just very different, and it doesn't tend to be a tool I use to solve too many problems. I actually have a last one. Would bilateral work be more beneficial in season for basketball players than loading heavy unilateral movements off season? I would swap that around. I do heavy bilateral work in the off season because you can really put some load on people, and then just keep them tipping over with unilateral in season.
You can buy programs at PayPal's, Marco, with PayPal. If you email us, we can sort you out. All right, I think we're done.
Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you all again next week.